Today's show is sponsored by Adventures Unlimited Press. Take your mind on a literary journey and go to adventuresunlimitedpress.com to purchase books from our famed experts right here on Truth Be Told. That's adventuresunlimitedpress.com. Today's show.
What's your thoughts on government cover-ups or covert societies attempting to control humanity? Do you believe in ancient astronauts, intergalactic communication, or extraterrestrial visitations? Ever had an experience with disembodied spirits or the paranormal universe? Are these subjects fact or fiction? Each week, Tony and Eddie explore these unbelievable realities and beyond. Exclusively on Truth Be Told.
Hello and welcome back to another broadcast of Truth Be Told with Tony and Eddie. I'm your host, Tony Sweet, and with me now, world-renowned psychic, Eddie Connor.
Thanks, Tony, and hi, everyone. Here's a question. Do you believe that aliens walk among us? A lot of people do, and we're here to find out how and why.
Eddie, our guest today, Dr. David Jacobs, is a researcher who has investigated over 1,000 abduction events experienced by more than 150 abductees. And today we will discuss his latest book, Walking Among Us, The Alien Plan to Control Humanity.
Man, that's going to be good. Since 1973, Dr. Jacobs has continued to devote most of his professional and personal energies to researching the UFO phenomenon in general and the abduction phenomenon in particular. Dr. Jacobs is one of the foremost UFO abduction researchers worldwide. As a result of his extensive primary research, he has developed the first scientific topology of the abduction process. Please put your hands together and welcome to the show, historian, UFO researcher, and author, Dr. David M. Jacobs.
David, thank you so much for being on Truth Be Told.
Well, thank you for having me.
Well, this is exciting, and this is one of our favorite topics to talk about here on the show. And Eddie and I are excited to talk about your latest book, Walking Among Us, the Alien Plan to Control Humanity. But as we always say, the first timers, if you're on our show for the first time, we would like to go back in history and find out your journey. How did you get started in UFO research, if you don't mind us asking?
Well, I don't really know how I got started, but I got interested in the subject when I was an undergraduate at UCLA about 120 years ago. And I just sort of got interested in it, and I kept my interest up. And in 1966, my wife and I moved to the University of Wisconsin for graduate school, and I continued to do research there, and I joined UFO organizations, and I eventually wound up as an investigator and went out and questioned people and all that sort of stuff, and wrote articles about it, and eventually, after I wrote my master's thesis on a completely and totally different subject, but I wound up writing my doctoral dissertation on the controversy over unidentified flying objects in America from 1896 to 1973, and I got my PhD in 73. So, and I stuck with it ever since then, and I was lucky enough, I taught at Temple University for 36 years, and
wow.
And when I taught the only course on UFOs and then eventually abductions. That was a regularly scheduled, full-credit, upper-level course on the subject, and I taught that all the way until I retired in 2011. I believe that is the only regularly scheduled course on the subject. It was the only one in the United States, and I don't think that there's another one now like it. I may be wrong about that, but I haven't heard of it yet.
Dr. Jacobs, can you take Tony and I and the audience back to the first time you were interviewing and talking to someone who was abducted, and how that was such I'm assuming, a dramatic twist in your research from just the UFOs themselves, and then you're now talking to the abductees. Tell us how that was the first time you had that interview, that experience.
Well, the very first time I did hypnosis with an abductee was probably the best session I ever had, and not in a way that you would think about it.
Oh, okay.
In a very, very unique way. I had been working with my friend Bud Hopkins for 4 years, talking to abductees and sitting in on his sessions and learning how he did it. And Bud Hopkins was a great pioneer in abduction research. And after 4 years of that, I was finally ready to do my first hypnosis with an abductee. I was nervous beyond description, and he had sent me a name from a woman who lived here in Philadelphia, where I am, and she had written him a letter saying she had experiences and all that. So I was nervous beyond belief. I wrote out an induction in a 3x5 card and held it in my hand so she couldn't see it, because I wanted to sound like a pro, as opposed to this was the first time I was ever doing it. And I had a little tape recorder with me, and we sat. She laid down on my couch in the living room, and I sat in a chair sort of behind her so she couldn't see me, you see. And but she was heavily into channeling.
Oh.
And she used to offer seminars on how to do channeling for other people and that sort of stuff. So I did my induction, and she went directly into her hypnotic world, or basically just getting relaxed. Hypnosis is really the wrong word. It's just simple, straight relaxation techniques. Okay. So she told me that we had agreed that we would look at something when she was 7 years old, which is something I would not do nowadays, but I didn't know what did I know in those days. And this was August 1986. And she remembered consciously that she was looking at a buttercup on the ground in a park, and that she felt arms around her and lifted her up into the sky, and she sort of that's what she remembered. So we did that, and she was actually with a friend, and she was looking at a buttercup, and then she felt arms under her body, and she was lifted up into this UFO, and she recognized the person who had done it. She had known him from before, meaning she had been abducted before. She called him Cosmo. He had a page boy haircut, she told me, which of course I'd never heard before. And he took her into this room, and he took her clothes off, and he gave her an examination, did this, that. And then there was sort of a reproductive examination also, which she was very embarrassed to tell me about. And he got her up off the table, and they walked down a hallway, and she met a gray alien. Then she was required to put her hands on the gray alien's head, and she felt affection and warmth and love coming from him. Cosmo was not looked human, actually. But this is a gray alien. And then after she took her hands off the head of the gray alien, the feelings disappeared, and then she continued walking down into through the hallway into another room where there was a group of aliens, gray aliens, who were sitting there, and they said they predicted that when she grew up she would be intelligent and beautiful and strong and whatever. And then Cosmo took her back out to the other room, got her clothes back on, and brought her back. And we talked about it afterwards for a little bit, and I was breathless with excitement. I had done it. I had done a hypnosis with an abductee, and I got a case of it. It's a jewel. It's priceless. It's wonderful. It's great. Oh my God! I called up my friend Bud Hopkins, and I compared notes on this and that. That night, I went upstairs to transcribe it onto my computer. Now, this is 1986, so my computer was a dual floppy 8 megahertz Zenith computer.
I remember those.
Right. And so I thought that my tape recorder would pick up every word she whispered.
Oh, no.
there was nothing. You could hear my voice fine. There was no answers whatsoever. I went into a cold sweat. I thought, oh my God, I've lost it. Oh my God. And it was horrible. It was terrible. It was horrible. But she came back for another session, and then she came back for another session, then another session, and after several months, I said, now, Melissa, remember that very first session we did? And she said, yeah. I said, well, I had a little trouble with the tape recorder. And I said, can we do that one again? She said, sure. So she's looking at a buttercup, and she feels arms around her, and the guy takes her up, and she's a familiar guy. His name is Cosmo. He's got a page boy haircut. Takes her in a room, takes her clothes off, puts her on a table, gives her an examination. There's a sort of reproductive examination also. She's very embarrassed to tell me about. Puts her clothes back on, takes her back to the park. I said, Melissa, remember you were walking to the hallway and you met that gray alien? You had to put your hands on his head, and you felt love and warmth and all that. She said, no, I don't remember that happening to me. I said, well, what about when you went into this other room and there was the council set up and you were going to grow up to be loyal, brave, courageous, and true and all that? She said, I think they had them to my friend Lydia, not to me.
No.
And that's why that was the best session I ever did, because it showed me that I did not know what I was doing. I was a complete idiot. I began to put into place elements of the event that of my questioning, false questions and that sort of stuff, so that I could control this situation a lot better. I vowed this was not going to happen to me again, and it was a gift. That's the gift. The gift of showing me how stupid I was, and things changed after that. And but I was fortunate enough to have that happen early on. For a lot of people, it never happens, and they tend to believe everything an abductee says, and that is a fatal error.
Yeah.
And I was gonna say, now with over 1,000, maybe 1,100, 1,200 now.
Yeah.
How do you still interview abductees or no?
Yeah, I still do. I got away from it for a year, and now I'm back involved with it again. The problem is that most people say the same thing over and over and over and over and over and over and over again.
Right.
So you get new people, and they're just going to say the same thing that everybody else did. And it's unusual for somebody to say something different. And when somebody says something different that you haven't heard before, you wait for other people to confirm that event or whatever it was, and then you begin to have evidence. Because if one person says it and nobody else ever says it again, then it's iffy. Now it depends on the person. And for example, one person I worked with, who I still work with every once in a while, she's been with me since 1987. And I know that she's extremely concerned. All the people I work with more than a couple of times are concerned with their own memories and whether their memories are correct or not. And they understand the role of confabulation, and they understand false memories and all that. Mm-hmm. Because I teach them it. That's what it boils down to. And so it's sort of more the same stuff over and over again. I don't know if I can learn much more at this point, to tell you the truth. I think I might have gone as far as I can go with the abduction phenomenon. That's it's 86, 96, 06, 16. It's 30 years by my count, and I have to do it on my fingers since I first started doing abduction research, and that might be enough for me. My whole life is geared towards watching television. That's what I do.
Well, that's something that 30 years is a long time, and 30 years of changing of culture, from the movies we've seen, slang, terminology, and you say a lot of the same stories. But have you seen because of the movies that we've seen, has it got more enhanced when some of the abductees, or the ones that say they are, a little more graphic?
Oh, does it influence their?
Yes. Yeah. Does it?
Well, I'll tell you, if this was coming out of popular culture, I would not be talking to you right now.
Right.
I'd be watching television.
Right.
That's true.
The thing is that, and I've said this on a bunch of different interviews, but it's critical to understand the three pillars of the abduction phenomenon.
That's what I was going to ask
say,
you.
what's that? I'm going to write these down.
Okay. Number one, it's global. That's the most critical of them all. It is global. It is not an American phenomenon. It does not require American popular culture. It happens around the world. I cannot tell you every single country because I don't know what's going on in Burma, and I don't know what's going on in North Korea, for example.
Right.
But I personally have worked with people from Africa and South America and Asia and obviously Europe and so forth, and I get emails and all the time from countries you never heard of who are abductees, and it's all the same. And listening to abduction accounts it's exciting, it's thrilling, it's amazing, and then eventually it becomes profoundly boring because people are saying the same thing over and over and over and over and over and over again, and that saying the same thing over and over and over again is good.
Yeah, it is,
because there are details about it that people don't know and that I've never let out and so forth, and you can't describe everything that happens in abductions. But abductees all go through the same route that all other abductees go through around the world. It does not matter their level of intelligence or their level of education or where they were born or how they were born or why they were born or anything. It's all the same. And the human brain is not patterned, does not contain patterns of information related to being abducted on board a UFO with strange-looking beings standing around you. That's not part of the human condition.
Right.
In other words, this phenomenon, because it is global, is unique. There has never been anything like this in human history, and I can say that with absolute assurance. There's never been anything like this. People from around the world saying the same thing with the same details, the same instruments, the same this, the same that, who are not aware that anybody else is saying things like that. It's extraordinary. It's absolutely astounding. If this phenomenon is not happening, and if this just is a mind game, if this just comes out of people's minds, and I will tell you that 90% of the abduction phenomenon has never been in popular culture. But if it just comes out of their minds, then this is the most important thing we have ever found in terms of human mentality, human cognition, human neurology. It's amazingly important if it's not happening. However, that's one pillar and a sideline. Another pillar is it's intergenerational. If a person is an abductee, their mother or their father or both, as the case might be, or abductees or are an abductee, and when they get married and have kids, their kids will all be abductees. And 99% of the time, abductees get married to non-abductees because the majority of people in the world are not abductees. Maybe only 5% are, maybe a little less or a little more. So the chances are that they're going to get married to a non-abductee. So one abductee can spread through the generations, can create many abductees. I used to think that, well, if the population pretty much stays the same or grows at a slow rate, eventually there'll be more abductees than there are non-abductees. But the problem here is that the population has been expanding at an unbelievably fast rate. In other words, when I was born in a year that was so long ago, nobody ever heard of this year. 1942.
Oh my gosh! No, I was kidding.
There were 2.3 billion people on Earth. Today, there's 7.4 billion people on Earth. That's in my lifetime. That's a huge population explosion. At the very least, the intergenerational aspect of it keeps up with the population growth. Now, it has other meanings as well if that's the case, and we know that that is the case because it just explodes. So that means that there has to be more UFOs. That means that there has to be more aliens. That means that because this is a global phenomenon, they have to continue with the growth of abductees in the population, abducting them many times a year and all that. So we have a growing phenomenon as well. The third pillar is the fact that it is clandestine. It is secretive. And in one of my books, can't remember which, I wrote a chapter on secrecy, and there's a lot of reasons for secrecy, but I wasn't smart enough to boil it down to one short sentence. And the sentence is, they're secret because they don't want us to know what they're doing. This is not good.
No.
If they were here to help us and to heal us and to make us feel good about ourselves and whatever else, that would be wonderful, and stop the environmental abuse and all that sort of stuff. They would just do it. They would help us. I mean, we would be happy. It would be great. We'd know. But this is not what they're interested in spite of what people might tell you about how they're here to heal the earth and all that. This has no interest in that I have found in 30 years of research. I have not found this at all. They are doing this for their own reasons, and they don't want us to know why. So those are the three main pillars of it, I think. And when you put those three things together, it adds up to one word: run.
And if you can't run, crawl fast.
Right.
Well, that's fascinating. And one thing that when you said you were talking about your first abductee, and it actually caught my ear when you said the kind of the humanoid and the gray, which I found that funny together because you usually don't hear those two together. But in most of your abductees, is it the grays that are mostly doing the abductions?
The way in which you look at the abduction phenomenon is that each UFO has a large or a smaller workforce within it. All of the aliens, no matter what they look like, all have tasks to do, and they're all part of the workforce. So the gray aliens are part of the workforce. They do a lot of what's called table procedures. They do other things as well. And within gray aliens, there's smaller ones who do more sort of grunt work, clean up,
right.
Come down and get people and bring them up to the UFO, squire them through the halls and all that. There are taller aliens, gray aliens, who do more complicated events on the tables and do the actual examination and all the rest of that stuff. And there are also aliens who look sort of crosses between human and alien, and I used to call them early stage, middle stage, and late stage, but now I've got there's humanoid stage, and then there's just plain human stage as well. And who I call these hybrids, and these are the ones who are moving in, walking among us, as case may be. And they all have their tasks. They are all bred to do their task. They're all part of the workforce. It's a top-down workforce. The top is almost certainly the insect-like ones, or insectolins, as I call them. I just say insect aliens. I put the two words together and drop the E. The insectolins. They are the ones who give orders, and everybody else takes orders, from what I can gather now. They don't need to take too many orders because their brains, if they have them, or whatever nervous system they've got up there, is geared towards their tasks. That's what they do. By the time they become really human-like, who can actually live here, their task is to live here. That is their task. That's what they were bred for also. And so you have to sort of close in a little bit on all the scattered ideas of what's going on here. It's a top-down hierarchy of sorts, just geared towards a certain goal.
Right.
I mean, this is they're here for a reason. It's goal-directed. They're doing it for because in some way it fulfills whatever job they've got to do, and it's not what we used to think. Our evolution of how we thought about the subject, even in the abduction phenomenon, was started out primarily as being they're trying to figure out what makes us tick. They're trying to figure out what's inside of us. They're pulling people's heads out and off and looking in their insides and putting their heads back on, or whatever they're doing, just to see what we're like and what our civilization is like, because they're interested. They're visitors. That word still exists. They're visiting us. That just couldn't hold. That the evidence just did not show that. Once we got into it, it was not that at all. And then my colleague Bud Hopkins discovered that some woman. He called me up one day and he said he just found the most amazing case he'd ever come across. Just absolutely amazing. This is before I started doing hypnosis. This is like 1985 or so. And he told me that this woman was brought into a room, and there was this weird-looking baby that she had to hold. Looked sort of like a cross-between human and alien. And I said, "Baby? What do you mean, baby?" He said, yeah, it was a baby. And this is the first time in human history, I think, that the word baby had ever been used with the word aliens, in the same sentence. And I couldn't get my brain around it. And they wanted her to hold the baby. And the abductee, I said, hold the baby? That's, it was nonsensical. And then they said they wanted her to feed the baby.
Oh.
And I said, feed the baby? What? Did she tell him that she can't feed the baby? She's not, lactating. She's not pregnant. She wasn't even married and all that sort of stuff. And he said, yeah, she told him she couldn't feed the baby, but they forced her to put the baby to her breast anyway. And I thought to myself, in the good old days when I knew absolutely nothing, that we would never, ever, ever be able to understand the minds of these aliens, because they valued form over function. In other words, the form is you put the baby to the mother's breast, but there's no function. She has no milk. She can't feed the baby. And I thought they think in very different ways than we do. However, I was wrong. They'd already simulated lactation. It's a common thing now that I've heard many, many times. It happens on a table. And I will ask the woman sometimes, when you get out to the table, how do your breasts feel? And if they say heavy, I know that they're going to feed a baby eventually, whether they know it or not. And it's extremely common. People have sent me examples of breast milk that they shouldn't be having after an abduction and all that.
Well, before we go on, we're going to take just a real quick break for our sponsor, and when we come back, we're going to talk about Walking Among Us, the alien plan to control humanity. This is something that is very fascinating, and I can't wait to hear your research on how you put this book together. So if you could hold on one second. This is Truth Be Told with Tony and Eddie. I'm Tony Sweet.
I'm Eddie Connor, and we have Dr. David Jacobs with us. Like Tony just said, his latest book is Walking Among Us, which is about the alien plan to control humanity. We'll be right back in about a minute.
Agri-terrorism in the USA? Is it possible? Makes you wonder, could it be possible for our food to be poisoned? How will the public know which foods have been contaminated with toxins before it's too late? Heaven's Harvest wants to help you become independent of these rare but possible scenarios. Protect your future and become self-reliant with heirloom seeds. Grow your own garden. From urban to rural living, Heaven's Harvest seeds are the answer to any type of scenario. Go to truthbetoldseeds.com and order your bucket today. Every type of vegetable you could imagine. Go to truthbetoldseeds.com or call 1-800-516-4773. When you go to truthbetoldseeds.com and purchase your bucket, you will get 5% off the original price. So order today at truthbetoldseeds.com.
Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Truth Be Told with Tony and Eddie. I'm Eddie Connor.
I'm Tony Sweet.
And we have with us Dr. David Jacobs. He's getting ready to tell us about his latest book, Walking Among Us. Wait, did I say that right? Yeah, Walking Among Us, the Alien Plan to Control Humanity. And this is what we love the most on this show. We love when, Dr. Jacobs has done hundreds of hypnotherapy interviews. He's done lots of research. Tony and I talk about this. Until you've had an experience, you can say, no, that stuff doesn't exist all you want to. But when you see a ghost, when you see a UFO, when you have boob soreness because you were feeding an alien baby, then that's when your experience authentically changes. And that's why we love having experts on the show that know their stuff, and they're sharing it with our audience. And we love you for being here and doing that, Dr. Jacobs.
Well, my pleasure, I guess.
And you know what? One thing that we talking about just on the break, I said we've had many people, many UFO experts, and I said, and this is not like a putting this as it's really a comparison of saying UFO abductee researchers versus UFO researchers, how it is. Most UFO researchers are the ones that say they're here to help us. They've stopped many wars. And then the ones that actually have done the research of abductees, cattle mutilations, how it's a different story.
Yeah. Well, it's one thing to say, oh, I think I saw a UFO, and it's another one to say, I was on it. I was on the table.
Right.
And it was in their authentic experiences. That's what fascinates us.
Right. Well, the reality of the situation, if I can use that word, is such that this is these beings' program. Has nothing to do with our problems on Earth, from what we can tell, from what I can tell anyway. But people who do this kind of work are brave individuals. They're good people, and some of them do work better than others, and so forth. But there's so few of us around that it's really awful. It's terrible. My next book is going to be a manual on just how to do hypnosis with abductees. I'm going to try to standardize the field. That is, the field of 5 people. And try to teach other people how to do this, but there's problems with it. In other words, if a young person, a young woman or a young man, gets interested in the subject and wants to do work and doing hypnosis with abductees, and they're, let's just say, 23 years old, and they get a hold of a 50-year-old woman. Well, there's a sexual component to the abduction phenomenon, and there's it is and it isn't, and but there's a lot of stuff that's very private, and a 50-year-old woman is not going to spill her guts to a young kid,
right?
And so they have to be older, in my opinion. So they have to be like at least 40. But when you're 40 years old, you usually have a spouse, you usually have kids, and you've got a career or a job of some sort, and very few people want to then switch to spending an inordinate amount of time dancing with aliens in some way.
That's true.
And so there's nobody coming up the pike. There's very few people who are doing this kind of work. It's awful, because this is, if it's happening, it's the most important thing that's ever happened in the history of humankind. And if it's not happening, it's the most important thing that's ever happened in the history of neurology.
Yeah. So
it can't be unimportant any way you look at it. So, but there's very, very few people around who do it. It's just a shame.
It is.
And of the people who do it, there's several in other countries and all that, and you read their material, and you know, it's they don't know what they're doing, to tell you the truth. They tend to accept everything that an abductee says at face value, which is, as I said before, an error, and they ask leading questions that are ridiculously leading questions that just make no sense to me whatsoever, and so it's a mess. Let's put it that way. It's just a mess. Even with a few
We'll put it
doing.
just simply, it's a mess.
So I've got a question for you. So do you ever feel like with all of this extraordinary work that you're doing, that one night you're driving home, it's like 8 or 9 o'clock at night or later.
Know where this is going.
There's no street lights on and that sort of thing, and your radio in the car gets a little fuzzy. Do you ever just once in a blue moon, Dr. Jacobs, just wonder if they've got their eye on you? And I'm completely serious by this question. Do you ever, once in a blue moon, wake up in the middle of the night and go, is there somebody in my window?
The answer so far has been no.
Okay, good.
However, it's more complicated than that. In other words, I've worked with people who don't like the abductee telling me things. And I've worked with I've worked with people whose hybrids around them do not like the idea that they're telling me things, and they have tried to get abductees to stop. And there was one point when they attempted to get me to stop, but they couldn't quite figure out where I was, and the woman who I was working with refused to tell them where I was, 125 miles away from me. And so she ultimately stopped working with me because the pressure was so great on both of us. But I'll be writing a book about that. That'll be my last book before it's television time.
Yay!
And,
yes.
Then, abductees see UFOs, let's just say, every single time. Every time they're abducted, they see a UFO. They're in one. I shouldn't exactly say that, because sometimes they're not in a UFO, and that's a whole other story, which you can get into later if you want. But abductees have experiences on a UFO from the time that they're children, young children, all the way into old age, and with great rapidity. In other words, over and over and over and over and over again, an enormous amount of abduction events. It's not that somebody is abducted once or twice and that's it, and they're released on their own recognizance. It's nothing like that. It just keeps going on over and over and over again. So the interesting thing about the human memory is that people tend to remember things more when they're children until they reach the age of around 11 or 12.
Yep.
Then they don't remember things like adults don't remember things.
Yep.
And because this is a clandestine phenomenon, the first person that it's kept secret from is the abductee. And they cannot remember what happened to them. They know something weird happened, and they know they were in one spot doing something, and then suddenly they were in another spot doing something, and it's 3 hours later, and they can't figure out what happened and how they got there, and well, I guess I just won't ever think about this, and then they just go their merry way. And they don't remember at all what happened to them. So that program of keeping it secret from abductees is extremely successful. Now, people see UFOs and are not abductees. Obviously, people, large numbers of people have seen them suddenly at once, and we know that there's triangular-shaped UFOs, and we know that there's circular-shaped UFOs, and all that. But if, however, a person sees a UFO at low level, treetop level, let's just say in their backyard at night, that UFO is there for a reason, and they're standing out in the backyard for a reason. And they might remember that. Yeah, even though it's going to be an abduction event, they might remember seeing a UFO, and that's it. And they don't remember being abducted, but that happens. Here's to show you how that works a little bit. Here's an actual event. Here's something that all UFO researchers and not all, probably, certainly all abduction researchers and maybe most UFO researchers have heard many times over. And it has to do with driving the car. Driving it down the road at night, let's just say, and guy is driving, the wife is in the next to him, 2 kids in the back. And the wife looks out the front windshield and says, "Oh my God, look at that!" And they see this UFO. Let's say it's during the daytime even. Doesn't even matter. It's this UFO, and it's off to the left of the side of the road, and it comes across the road, and it goes over, and it hovers over a field. So the the guy says, "I pulled over to the side of the road to get a better look at that thing," and wham! It flew away at fantastic speed. And they were all amazed, and that was it. And I heard that story over and over and over again from all sorts of different people, just, how they saw this UFO and they pulled over to the side of the road. And I got to thinking about this concept of pulling over to the side of the road. And then I started doing research, looking at these things when people told me that in my, who were abductees who were seeing me. And what they saw was they were driving along. The wife says, "Look at that!" And there's this UFO over on the side of the road on the left, and it goes across the road and it hovers over a field and just stays there. And the guy then gets the idea that he has to stop the car.
Wow!
So
of course he
pulls
does.
over. They come, these beings walk down, they open up the door, they lead him out, they lead him into the UFO, I go up into it, and they do this, that, and they bring him back in the car, and then he sort of comes to, he looks over, and wham, that thing flew away at fantastic speed.
3 hours later.
That's right, exactly, 3 hours later, or 2 hours, whatever it is. That's so people who see UFOs closely like that or in isolated areas, oftentimes there's a reason why that UFO was there, and there's a reason why they were there, and so you can't just dismiss it as a UFO sighting. Each one has to be investigated carefully.
We have a chat room, and somebody in the chat room, and I thought this was a great question, and I'm going to ask it for him, and I don't even know how to pronounce his name. It says, is there a theory as to selection of the abductee? Do they have similar traits? Do they share similar traits in the abductees?
The answer is no. There's been a lot of talk about Rh negative blood type. I asked 10 abductees what their blood type was. None of them had Rh negative. See, the thing is, it's random. In other words, people get married at random to whoever they want to get married to, right, whether it's a male or female or whatever. And if they have kids, those kids, they're not going to have an Rh negative blood if perhaps if one of the spouses didn't have it and all that. It can't be. Yeah. It's just too widespread. You can't find those single kinds of traits. Having said that, there has to be something that has undergone some sort of a change in abductees' brains in order for them to communicate telepathically with these other beings. All communications on board a UFO, I have to make that distinction, are done are telepathic. Yeah. Telepathy is not a normal state of humankind.
Right.
If a very small percent, if only 1% of all people in this country, in America, were telepathic, we'd live in a different society.
Oh, yeah.
The ramifications are mind-boggling. But that is not the case. So they had to do something to allow that to happen. And there's, I won't go into it, but there's other things too that are involved with the telepathic world. But so there has to be that. Can that be measured from the outside or no? I don't know. And most abductees, are not even aware that they're abductees. So, but otherwise, in terms of people used to tell me that only American Indians are abducted. only people of Irish descent are abducted. Only people who are related to kings of England are abducted.
Only people who live in
told me those things.
Yeah, exactly. We have 3 minutes left, and this interview has flown by.
Yeah, I can't believe it. It's crazy. But I want Eddie to tell you his story real quick.
Well, no, I was one of those people who saw 3 V-shaped or triangle-shaped UFOs flying at treetop level.
Just you.
No, it wasn't me. It was a handful of us little redneck kids throwing potatoes up at them at about 8 or 9 o'clock at night. And I've seen 5 or 6 ships my whole life. And then we used to have this little dude that would come and visit us. And only me and one of my 3 brothers saw it. And we never talked about it till we were in our 40s. But that when you were talking about that description of some of the abductees, I was like, what? So here's a question. And now we have 2 minutes left. So sorry about that. But I had to share it.
Yeah, I wanted you to share it.
Is there can you tell once there is the alien-human hybrid, is there an easy transition from their consciousness into humanity once they get here and they start blending in, as it were? Or is they, and I mean this sincerely, what I'm going to say, or is there a little bit of a like retardation, a transition period to acquiesce to our consciousness once they get here as hybrids? Or do you know?
Yeah, it's not acquiescing to our consciousness. It's just learning how to be a human, because even though they've learned about all sorts of human things while they were kids growing up on a UFO, living here is so infinitely more complicated that they have to have an abductee with them at all times that they're around, not at all times, but with them most of the time, so they know, and this is what my book is about, how to go shopping, how to push a cart, how to cook an egg. They might never have seen an egg before. They know they have to learn how to, when you go up to the cash register, the person behind the register says, "Hi, how you doing?" They can't just stand there and look at them. They've got to respond.
Yeah.
They have to say fine or something like that. They have to learn all the subtle things that we just know automatically since we were babies, because we just observed it, of how to act human. And that is what abductees are doing now. They are not what a lot of abductees are doing now, I should say, not all, at teaching these beings who are living in apartments how to be human, how to dress properly, how to eat properly, how to drive cars, and all the things that we do. And abductees now, a lot of their roles are just teaching them how to be human.
Well, and Dr. Jacobs, really quick, we're making it pretty damn easy for them because we can't get our face out of an iPhone. And so all they have to do is walk around and act dumb.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I guess if they just walked around and looked down at an iPhone, people would
they wouldn't have to do anything.
Yeah, so we're making it easy for them. So that's our show. Thank you, Dr. David Jacobs. I know Tony's.
Well, the thing here's the thing is Dr. Jacobs is going to be at Contact in the Desert June 3rd through the 6th. You're going to be one of the speakers, I believe.
Wow.
I'm giving a talk, 2 workshops, and I'll be on a panel discussion also.
This is great. And you can go to UFOabduction.com, UFOabduction.com. Check out all...
Singular, not plural.
Yeah, not plural. And please go and pick up these books, Walking Among Us, The Alien Plan to Control Humanity. Mm-hmm. And if you've missed this show, came in halfway through, go to our YouTube channel, listen to it, send us a comment. And if you have something you want to send over, and I tried to find any social medias. Do you have any social medias at all?
Well, sometimes I'm on Twitter. Sometimes I'm not. And sometimes I have a Facebook page, 2 pages. One was created by a kid in India that people go to, but I have my regular Facebook page also.
Awesome.
And like that.
Perfect.
Thank you
well,
so
thank
much.
you so much.
Thank
We
you.
so appreciate it. And definitely, if you want to, again, listen to us on iHeartRadio, iTunes, Stitcher, go to truthbetoldwebtv.com. Check out all of our upcoming shows. We have some great shows and great guests for you, just like Dr. David Jacobs right here on Truth Be Told with Tony and Eddie. I'm Tony Sweet.
I'm Eddie Connor.
And we're out of here. Stick around for Shar Margolis with Shar Vision. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time.